In major keys, there are 3 minor chords available to you. For example, in the key of G major, these are 2 A minor, 3 B minor, and 6 E minor. Minor chords can play an important role in turnarounds. A turnaround is a chord progression, usually 2 or 4 bars, that loops several times or turns around. Their repetition is important in making song parts memorable. For this reason, they are often used in choruses. If you look at the chorus of the song we've created so far, you will see that it is a turnaround. Turnarounds are found everywhere in popular music. We'll discuss them further later on, but just be aware of them for now. These minor chords can add significant new colour to our chord palette and transform our song. An easy way to use minor chords is to swap out a major chord from a progression for its relative minor. Every major chord in a major key has a relative minor chord. These 2 chords share 2 notes in common. The 6 chord is always the relative minor of the 1 chord, 3 is always the relative minor of 5, and 2 is always the relative minor of 4. Substituting major chords with their relative minor will create new interest to a progression, but won't sound out of place because of the close relationship in notes. Let's look at a few examples. Listen to how the relative minor changes the feel of the progression. Another way to use relative minors is to use them on the same bar as their relative major chord. This can be useful for later repeats of song sections to add a bit of interest. Setting up an expected repeat of a progression and then breaking it in this way is a useful songwriting technique to add interest or surprise with very little effort. Here's an example using a couple of relative minor substitution techniques. It can be useful to hold back chords for maximum impact, and if we are bringing a minor chord into our otherwise major chord song, delaying its use can be particularly powerful. Want to have instant access to 7 songwriting keys? Don't waste any more time searching, go to majorkeychords.com and download your free major key chord guide today. In another video, I created 12-bar song sections using only major chords. If you want to watch that, it will be included in a playlist linked at the end of this video. In this example, we will hold back our minor chord until bar 9, where we expect to first hear the 5 chord. Listen to its impact and also how we delay 5 until the very last bar. Like the major chords, minor chords also have 2 inversions each. The process is the same as with the major chords. For example, the 2 chord A minor in the key of G major has the notes A, C and E. If we put the flat or minor third note in the bass, our lowest note becomes C. This is an A minor first inversion. As before, the order of notes above this do not matter. And if we put the 5th note in the bass, it is a minor second inversion. So for A minor, this would be the E note. The minor first inversion is a bit like the major first inversion. It can add a bit of movement to a progression. It also intensifies the minor sound because the flat or minor third note is now more prominent. The second inversion minor is gloomy and foreboding. Like its major second inversion cousin, it doesn't feel like it wants to move as strongly as the root or first inversion chords. As with our major chord inversions, minor inversions are useful for adding interest, displacing or delaying other chords, and creating moving bass lines. Here's a progression that uses the 3 chord and both of its inversions. Listen to how the first inversion creates a rising bass line in bar 10, taking us to the 1 chord in bar 13. Also listen to the gloomy second inversion as the last bar. This would set us up for a repeat of the section or start another section with chord 1. By adding a 4th minor chord to a song, we can really open up the power of the turnaround. Many popular songs have used turnarounds with 1, 4 and 5 and one of the minor chords to generate strong, repetitive hooks in their song. The classic way to do this is to play the minor chord after the 1 chord and then using chords 4 and 5 to bring us back around to the 1 chord. You can use techniques we've discussed to alter turnarounds, such as varying the rate of chord change and displacing chords. Displacing chords in a turnaround would be to disrupt the standard approach of starting on 1 and ending on 5. For example, You can use the escalator effect, putting the chords in Roman numeral order. With 4 chords now, it has a stronger effect. For example, any of the turnaround chords can be inverted. This can strengthen escalator effects, create interest or difference with later repeats, and withhold chords for impact. Feel free to experiment and transform your own turnarounds to see which ones work in your own song. Keep in mind that if an inversion bass note matches another chord's bass note in the turnaround, it will weaken the sense of 4 different chords. Here's a turnaround with 3 first inversions, creating a strong escalator to the standard 1 chord. You can also set up future chord progressions with inversions and turnarounds. If you change the bass note with inversions to imply a future chord progression, it can act as a preview of what's to come. For example, an intro could be setting up a standard chorus turnaround. It is worth noting that turnarounds should not be overused. They can make your songwriting boring, cliché, and musically lazy. Increasing the number of turnarounds in a song weakens their impact. It also makes your song sound more like many other popular songs because turnarounds are so widely used. Also keep an eye on how many escalator type turnarounds are in your song. Try to keep this to only 1 and use some of the techniques discussed to make any other turnarounds really unique and different. In previous videos, I made 4 versions of a song using only the major 1, 4 and 5 chords in the key of G major. There will be a link to a playlist with those videos at the end of this one, so stay tuned for that. Let's use some of the minor chord techniques we've discussed to update our song. We'll have a listen and then discuss what's changed. You can see that we have brought in the 3 minor chord. The intro uses inversions and standard chords to act as a trailer for the chorus bass line. The inversions mask the full chords for later in the song, and the chord rate change in bar 4 moves us into the verse. We are also holding back our 3 minor chord for later in the song. In the verse, we have added some movement by increasing the rate of chord change and using some inversions. Look at the 3 chord in the second half of the verse. It is the relative minor of the 5 chord that previously appeared there. It is also the first time we hear the 3 chord. We're using the first inversion so the bass note is the same as the 5 chord and it can still work in our rising bass line that sets up the chorus. It also shares a bar with its relative major chord 5. Our chorus has become a simple primary turnaround, which is in Roman numeral order. It is the only turnaround and the lack of inversion gives it a clarity compared to the rest of the song. The first half of the bridge is unchanged to keep the descending feel. In the second half we introduce half bar 3 to 1 changes to inject some movement. We use inversions so that the chords share bass notes. The options we have to construct a major key song are now wide and varied. It can become overwhelming sometimes as a songwriter starting with a blank page and having so many options. Start with some chords you can play on your instrument or that you like the sound of and go from there. Think about creating a core or scaffolding for your song and then you can use some of the techniques we've discussed to flesh out or improve your song. We had a total of 6 chords to use in our major key song. So far we've only used 4, but you can of course use 5 or even all 6. If we do this, it further opens up the possibilities with our song. With inversions, that's 18 different chords to play with. You can utilize the techniques we've discussed so far. A few more ideas you can use with more chords are: sections can be entirely minor or major for greater contrast. It is easier to have one turnaround and other sections being less repetitive. It opens up the ability to have no turnarounds at all. It is easier to hold back chords 1 or 5 to increase their impact. You can spread the minor chords into different song sections to give each section a new flavour. You can also reharmonise later repeats of song sections. This involves swapping out chords on later repeats to freshen up the sound. The simplest way to do this is to swap out all the chords for their relative major or minor, which we discussed earlier. Another approach is to swap selected chords, maybe major for minor, to highlight sections or phrases in the melody. They don't have to be relative minors. Let's revise our song again to utilise all 6 chords in the key of G major. We're going to use a full song arrangement this time: intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Listen out for the final chorus after the bridge where we use some reharmonizing ideas. We'll discuss all the changes we have made after the song. In the intro, we swap the 4 chord for its relative minor of 2. It is the only minor chord in this section. The verse stays the same, just previewing the 3 chord slightly. In the chorus, we're changing the second repeat 1 chord to its relative minor 6. Listen to the drama this brings to the chorus. In the 4th bar of the bridge, we're swapping out the 4 chord for the 6 minor chord. This shares the bass note with the inversion in the bar before. The rest of the bridge is the same. For our final chorus, we have swapped out the chords for their relative minor or major in the first half. The second half is the standard chorus progression, and we end end on a 1 chord this time to bring the song to a close. There's a lot to remember when writing a song. Feel free to watch sections of this video again whenever you need inspiration for your major key songs. The main thing is to experiment and trust your ear. Your opinion is the one that counts. If you enjoy the songwriting process, then you'll create songs that you like. And if you like your songs, then other people will do as well. You've learnt about minor chords in major keys, but this doesn't mean you'll be able to write an entire song. This could be solved very easily with the playlist on screen. Make sure you watch that next to become a songwriting master.